Hello and welcome to TALRadio. At TAL, we connect those who are willing to give to those who are in need. My wonderful audience and my lovely listeners, you're watching and listening to a wonderful series on self-coaching. And believe it or not, time is really flying by. Let's welcome Andrew Tallents. Andrew is a self-coaching expert who has coached thousands of leaders across the globe. Andrew, welcome to TALRadio.
Hi, Sandy. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you so much. And today it's something really important because I remember in one of the previous episodes you mentioned that whether you like it or not, it's like probably 5 to 8 years down the line, you really need to take a back seat and give your throne to somebody else. So let's talk about building the legacy. Building a legacy and creating lasting impact through your leadership. And I'm sure you're really one of the best people to talk about it. So let me start by asking you, what does building a legacy truly mean in today's world of leadership?
So this is quite a deep subject. So we'll slow down today and think about what this might mean for people. And for a lot of people listening to this or watching this, it's not been reconnected to them in the past in terms of what their legacy is. But eventually we start to think about this. And the best way to think about this, and then we'll relate it to leadership, is when it comes to all of our funerals at some point, and we have obviously some people saying some words in the eulogy about our life and what it was that we provided in that life. That's a good way of thinking about legacy, because what people say about you, how people felt around you, what kind of difference you made to people who are in the congregation at that point is really what legacy is all about. Now, some people provide that legacy just by being who they are and don't think too much about it. And others actually really think about the legacy they want to leave behind. So from a leadership perspective, I guess it's two things. Firstly, what am I trying to make an impact in as a leader in terms of what I'm doing every single day and having real visualization around that and understanding? But secondly, then living that every day. So the people around me, even though they understand what I'm trying to create and make an impact in, they feel that that's consistent in the way that I'm behaving as well. So legacy is all about how people feel about what we do, what we say, what we create, not just today, but also in the future.
You started on a very emotional, but yet a very practical note, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, that was really emotional. Talking about, the ending of life and all that. So let me move on and start asking you, is legacy something that we create intentionally, or is it the result of everyday's action that we do?
Yeah, again, I think this is both. Most people do it through everyday action, whether they like it or not, whether they know that. And and I know there are people out there through not necessarily intending to this, but because they're feeling under pressure or they're feeling negative in terms of their life, that they will create a legacy where people don't feel it's positive. There's a legacy of sometimes toxicity or negative relationships, and they don't mean to do it, but that is there. So that is when it's just happening every day. Intentionality is all about, I've got a vision. So for me, it's impacting many leaders around the world so they can learn how to self-coach. And I do that in a number of ways. And that's the legacy I'm trying to leave. People will judge that around me when I've gone about whether I've done it, but I'm intentional. Everything I do, this podcast, everything I do is with that in mind. So it is both, but some people don't realize that they're doing it on a day-to-day basis, even though they are.
How can leaders shift from focusing on short-term success to creating long-term impact?
So there are three things here. It links to a little bit to what we said earlier. So the first thing is I need to be really clear about what it is I want to have achieved at the end of this period of my life, whether it's a short-term period or a longer-term period. I need to be very clear with the people that are working for me that I'm leading about what that is and the impact that will make. I need to write it down. I need to make sure other people can write it down, that they can communicate it to me. And then every now and again, every 4 to 6 weeks, I need people to tell me again how I'm doing against creating that legacy and whether I'm behaving in the right way, whether I'm actually being true to it. And it keeps that long-term vision. It's very easy for me on a short-term basis, day to day, to forget all about that and focus on the short-term results without necessarily thinking about the legacy. So the best way for this really is to get people to tell us around us, give us feedback about whether we're being consistent with the long-term vision and the legacy we're trying to leave.
Right. So technically people around you also actually play a role in building a legacy for you.
Yeah, absolutely. If they understand it, if they believe it, if they really want to be part of it, and they can see that you're being part of it and living that every single day.
You just mentioned about, every day-to-day actions that you achieve. So I really wanted to understand, is leaving behind achievement different from leaving behind influence?
Yes, it is. Leaving behind achievement usually means it's around some kind of goals, numbers, money, finances, statistics, measurements. That's what people are measured by in terms of success around achievements. I guess legacy is much more around how it feels once we've done those things and as we've done those things. So did we feel as though when we were creating the success and the achievement that it was something that was worthwhile doing, and we felt the collaboration, and we felt we were a team, and we felt as though people were really being impacted by it in a positive way? Or did we just hit the numbers and it felt very flat? So just because you're achieving things and being successful doesn't always mean that the legacy is going to last, and therefore your influence over time will wane.
That's so thoughtful and so very, very true. Achievements are basically referred to numbers as such.
Yeah.
Moving on, when we talk about leaders, are there some particular habits that leaders should cultivate today to build a legacy that lasts for generations to come?
So I think it's connecting again to what it is that's truly important for us. So a lot of us don't really think about this because we're focused on the day-to-day. But if we truly think about our true north, about what's important to us in terms of values, in terms of what it is that we want to leave behind for our own children, our family, and all those that work for us, then keeping that front of mind is always very important. So some people on their laptops have little sticky notes, or they have little reminders on their phones about why they're doing all of this. And it comes back to what we've talked about in previous episodes about really connecting with the why. Why am I here? What is I'm here to do? And always connecting to that. So I think that's the very important thing. And I think in terms of the short-term habits around that, it's making sure that on a daily basis we're reconnecting, and then making sure again that those around us understand that. And again, that they're making sure that we are delivering on those things that are very important for the long term. It's very easy to be shifted, as we are in this UK at the moment with our new Prime Minister, in terms of some short-term goals as opposed to what the long term might look like. So the short-term habits are more about reconnecting with the long-term vision and making sure that's always forefront of mind.
Andrew, since you work so much with the leaders, but you actually work very closely with them, I really wanted to understand, I'm sure the audience is also pretty curious, are they as calm and composed as they appear to be?
Interesting. Some of them are, and you can usually tell that by how it feels to be around people like that. There's just this sense of inner calm, a sense of having space and time and being comfortable in their own skin. And then there are others that actually project, this calmness, but actually inside it feels very much like very rushed, lots of things going on in my head, but actually I'm very good at keeping all of those kinds of emotions down. Now, there's no wrong or right with either of them, but in terms of sustainability and delivering legacy, the former where the individual leader is much more comfortable in the moment is the one that's probably going to succeed in the long term and leave that legacy.
Thank you so much for answering that one. Moving on, in one of the previous episodes, we actually talked a lot about mentoring, being mentored. So how important is mentoring and developing future leaders as a part of one's legacy?
It's really, really important. So I can tell you now what my legacy is, and then for the next 2 years, I could try and create that within an organization that I was leading. One of the best ways for me to ensure that legacy is intact is not just to tell people what the legacy is and for me to behave in the right way to deliver that legacy, but it's to actually teach, educate, coach, mentor all of those people in the organization that are wanting to buy into the legacy and to help create it, to help them understand how to behave, how to deliver, how to actually be in relationships, what's important, how to build trust. And so you can do that from your own position, acting as a role model, but also teaching them how to do it and for them to learn on a daily basis. So that's a far easier way because you've got more and more people behaving in that way in the business organization rather than just you. And over time, again, when you've gone, hopefully those people remain and they still behave in the right way to be able to deliver the long-term vision.
Well, I'm smiling on the fact that, that we've always talked a lot about, journaling and writing things and everything. Kind of a checklist, basically. So as we have checklists, I'm sure, so do the leaders. Do you feel that, the kind of checklist the leaders have, is it important for them to keep a check on that to evaluate their legacy? Is it correct, or is it something needs to be done to it?
Yeah, there's something here that people can do if they're brave. And this is very courageous. We've talked a bit about this, I think, when we talked about trust. So if I tell somebody what the legacy is that I'm trying to create, and then I understand who are all the different people that have a role in delivering that legacy or are interested in that legacy, and there's a variety of different what we call stakeholders. Some of those will be shareholders in the business, some of those will be customers, some of them will be suppliers, some of them will be people in the community, which we'll come on to later. And if we regularly go to those stakeholders and say to them, as you are aware, this is the legacy we're trying to create, can you give me a rating on how I'm doing at that at the moment from your perspective as your stakeholder? And that can really give us some great input in terms of what it means to them and whether the legacy we're providing is something that's worthwhile and valuable to those different stakeholders. So it's difficult to do because it takes time, but it's definitely the best feedback that we ever get. And they are the ones that we're creating it for. So I'd encourage people to do that.
And as you mentioned, really courageous to go and ask somebody to evaluate you.
Yeah, and keep the checklist going through, and every single 6 months, 3 months, yeah.
How does setbacks and failures contribute to the story of a leader's legacy?
Well, this is a great question in that I will be trying to create a legacy as you will, as everyone will. And we're going to make mistakes because we're human beings. And therefore, the overriding important aspect of building a legacy is how we as a group of people that are within this learning from the mistakes that we made. So we make a number of mistakes, and the way that we teach each other and learn from that, and the way that we educate each other so that we can then again connect to the legacy is so important. And that's part of the richness, the fabric of what it is that we try and do each day to the long-term goals. If we just see failure as a negative and a weakness and something that we shouldn't be doing, then again, suddenly the legacy starts to fall apart because we start to ignore some of the messages from the universe or wherever it is that's telling us about the different directions that we should go. So it's very important, as long as we can learn from it and educate each other around the learnings and the gifts within those mistakes.
All right. Something that leads to me to my next question is, we actually talked about achievements and influence of the leaders. But beyond that, how can leaders contribute to their communities beyond business success?
I think there's two reasons that this is important. The first is the point we made before, that there's so many complex stakeholder relationships now in business. So where the business is located, where we source our materials from, where our employees live. So it's very important that the thing that we're trying to create is understood by the people in the local community so that they connect to it. And the best way to do that, again, is to either live in the community, ideally, so live and breathe on a daily basis outside of work, understanding what our community thinks of it. But more importantly, maybe try and connect to some kind of project that's required in the community, whether that's a local church project, or whether it's a project around youth, or whether it's a project around farming land, or whatever it is that we can get involved in as leaders, which may be completely separate to our business interests, but we're showing that we want to get involved in the local community. So engagement in community is really important to show about sustainable partnerships and also get people to understand us better in terms of what we're trying to create. So look locally, see the things that you're interested in, see things you can contribute to, and just give your time. You don't need to give money. A lot of the time, it's just your time and experience.
I think on that note, I can really say that no wonder that most of the big organizations in the world actually have CSR responsibilities, corporate social responsibilities, as a very important part of their mission and vision also. And most of the biggest leaders, you'll actually find them to be very philanthropist also in nature.
Yes, that's right.
So why is investing in people often considered the greatest legacy a leader can ever leave?
Because they're the next generation. So if we think about the young people that are coming through now, I've got a 20-year-old and 18-year-old who are, in the employment market. And if we invest in those kinds of people and the ones that are the future, and teach them the importance of what it is that we're trying to create and how we want them to try and create it, and invest in them for their ability to develop skills in those areas, which is what it's all about, then it just multiplies in terms of the impact and also the difference that they can make. keeping our legacies and our visions to ourselves and very closed and not sharing it with others and not coaching others and investing in others just means we're going to make less impact in the world. So give people the tools and they will actually go and do it. Teach a person to fish and they can go and fish. But at the end of the day, if we don't invest, then we can't expect the legacy to be fulfilled.
The word legacy itself is such a heavy word that I really feel that if this episode is not going to do justice to this particular topic as such. But talking about you, I would say, if your leadership journey, God forbid, it ended today, you just plan to retire, at this particular moment, then what do you think that people would really remember you for?
I think for me, it's the people out there that have had some kind of contact with me over the years, where because of an interaction I've had with them, it's made them think that actually I can be the solution to the problems I face in my life, and that they take a step forward to try and solve those problems as opposed to letting other people solve those problems. So it comes back to the self-leadership and self-coaching. But I think that for me is hopefully what people remember me for. And yeah, that's what I'm working for every day.
Lovely. I'm sure there's more to it. So moving on, what practical steps can listeners, begin just, for example, somebody is listening to us at this moment and they really think about their legacy journey from today itself. So what are those particular steps that they can really start taking from today itself to build their own leadership legacy?
So I think it can start today for everyone listening to this and watching this. And if you were to now think about, if for the rest of your life there's something that you wanted to spend time investing your time, your money, your work, your experience, and you could create the time to do it, where you could make a difference, what would that be? Where would it be? Who would you impact? Who would it help? Who would you have involved? Who would you want to contribute? And then really start to write or draw, some people like to draw, what that vision looks like for you. And even if that means that you're actually working in an organization now which is far removed from that vision, it means that every decision you make from today onwards means that you're moving one step closer to that. And I'd also say once you've got that vision about what it is that you really want to do, is actually then share it with as many people as you can and ask people if they want to come and help you to try and deliver it. And it's amazing how many people do want to come and help when you start sharing these things. So that's what I would do. Don't be afraid, create the vision. We know that we're not going to be able to create the legacy tomorrow, but we can take one step closer towards it just by coming up with it, telling somebody, and then looking at the next step, one step in front of the other.
That's very true. I mean, as they say, Rome was not built in a day. So in just one day, you cannot build a legacy. It's over the time project, basically. And when we talk about leaders, we've spoken so much positive about them, but I'm sure there are some negative traits in them as well. So what are the common mistakes that prevent leaders from leaving a positive and a lasting impact?
I think this is all about worrying what other people will say. So a lot of people do this, you and I will have done this at various times in front of different people. But if we lose sight of what's important for us in terms of the legacy we're trying to create because we're worried about what somebody else might say or how it might look or how we might be viewed or the fact that it might look as though we failed, and therefore become attached, if you like, to the way that we are involved in the legacy, then that's where it starts to go wrong. I think it also starts to go wrong when we start to maybe take some shortcuts or we start to look at some short-term success, which then is detrimental to the long-term vision and legacy because we've lost sight of it again. We've not reconnected with it. And then the third is that we start to maybe be misaligned with the legacy. So we explain something to our teams or our people that work for us, and then actually the way we behave each day is inconsistent with that, and people start to feel that we're being disingenuous and that we are misaligned and they can't really buy into it. So I think they're the things, and we can solve all those things by just checking in each day and just seeing how we feel about how the legacy is going on our watch and whether we can reconnect to it. So it comes back to self-awareness and being able to speak to people to just share how we're feeling and try and get back on track.
So true. Now, before I let you go and wrap up this wonderful episode of building legacy, what is one piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to start their leadership to make a difference long after they are gone? Very sentimental, I would say.
Yeah. I think this will work for most people. I think take maybe 2 minutes just to think about somebody that you've really been inspired by in your life. Maybe a teacher, maybe a work colleague, maybe a leader, maybe someone in the community. And then start to think, what was it about that person that inspired you? Why did they do that? What was it about them? What they were trying to do at the time? And I would just really reconnect, because if you do reconnect with that feeling, it probably tells you something about who you are and what it is that you want to be known for and the way that you want to be remembered when you're gone. And that's a good first step to then working out what it is that you should be doing on this planet.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Andrew, for, giving us this wonderful time of yours, and also letting us know so much about how to build legacy and why is it so important to build legacy. So I'm sure all the people, especially the youngsters who just believe in today, well, you also need to pull up your socks and start building the legacy from today itself. All right, so on that wonderful note, I'm going to wrap up this wonderful segment of the series called Self-Coaching. Thanks a ton to my lovely audience and my lovely listeners. Keep on listening to TALRadio.